You open your eyes to the gentle hush of reeds swaying on the banks of the Nile. It's the 4th millennium BCE, and the morning sun is still deciding whether it wants to rise fully or simply suggest the idea of dawn. Around you, the rhythm of life is slow, deliberate, and marked by the predictability of nature: floods, planting, harvest. And for one early riser, the first task of the day is neither prayer nor breakfast. It's something far more practical: cleaning their teeth. The ancient Egyptians are credited with creating what may be the earliest recorded version of toothpaste. Long before fluoride, bubblegum flavor, or ergonomic toothbrushes, the Egyptians were blending a mixture that was at once utterly mundane and oddly sophisticated. It consisted of ox hooves powder, ashes, burned eggshells, and pumice. Yes, pumice, the same volcanic rock that scrapes skin from calloused feet, was, in ancient times, the go-to for a fresher smile. But why would such a seemingly brutal concoction emerge in one of history's most advanced civilizations? The answer begins, as many Egyptian stories do, with the Nile. Life in ancient Egypt was tightly bound to the rhythms of the river. Each flood brought silt and life-giving soil, but also bacteria and dust, lots of dust. That fine grit settled on bread, on water jars, in homes, and especially in food. Their diet, rich in bread and rough grains ground in stone mills, contained minuscule bits of rock that over time wore down teeth like sandpaper. The average Egyptian might not have lived long, but their dental wear resembled that of someone far older. Surviving medical papyri from the 4th century BCE describe treatments for toothworms, a common belief in ancient times that dental pain was caused by tiny worms burrowing into one's gums. These documents also include prescriptions for mouthwashes made from cumin, frankincense, and beer. You might imagine it didn't smell pleasant, but then again, neither did anyone else. By 3000 BCE, it's clear that Egyptians valued oral hygiene. Tomb inscriptions depict servants holding small sticks that appear suspiciously similar to modern toothbrushes. Some sticks were frayed at the ends, precursors to the chewing sticks later used in other ancient cultures. Called miswak in Arabic centuries later, these twigs from the Salvadora persica tree had antibacterial properties. Whether by instinct or observation, the Egyptians had stumbled into a daily routine that would carry into the future. Dental hygiene was not just a matter of comfort. It was bound up in religious and spiritual practices. Cleanliness. To ensure this, wealthier Egyptians used a paste made from crushed myrrh and powdered rock salt. Myrrh had antibacterial properties and offered a slightly sweet aroma, masking the otherwise unappetizing scent of calcified ox hoof. In effect, brushing your teeth in ancient Egypt was a bit like applying a scrub of gravel and incense. For the lower classes, however, hygiene was rudimentary at best. With fewer resources and little access to the papyrus-prescribed formulas of temple physicians, most peasants resorted to water and chewing on twigs, if they bothered at all. The irony of ancient Egypt is that even the poorest shared the same exposure to the ever-present dust, but the solutions remained stratified by class. And yet, as we dig deeper, both metaphorically and archaeologically, we find that even the poorest workers were buried with some form of dental care. Excavations of workers' tombs at Deir el-Medina have revealed containers resembling toothpaste jars and crude brushes, suggesting that brushing one's teeth was not merely a ritual of the elite, but a practice woven into the fabric of Egyptian identity. Why then was so much effort put into an act that offered little visible reward in a time of short lifespans and frequent disease? Perhaps it had less to do with health and more to do with control, mastering the body in a land where death was a daily companion and the afterlife an elaborate bureaucratic process. A clean mouth may have felt like one small victory over decay. Even in death, Egyptians cared for their teeth. Mummies, particularly of the elite, were sometimes buried with linen wrapped tightly around their jaws, designed to keep the mouth closed for eternity. In some cases, dental prosthetics were discovered, gold wires securing loose teeth, or artificial teeth made from ivory or bone. These weren't necessarily functional, but decorative, symbolic. The mouth had to be whole, preserved and pure, so the dead could speak the proper spells in the next world. So you imagine yourself there, sitting beside the Nile, chewing on a twig that tastes faintly of resin and river water. You crush the paste by hand, mixing chalk, salt, and ashes into a rough, sandy mixture. Your gums sting as you apply it with your fingers or a crude brush. It is not pleasant, but as the sun rises and the boats begin gliding along the water, you realize this routine is both ancient and oddly familiar. Across time, the urge to scrub away decay, to keep some part of ourselves fresh in the face of dust and entropy, seems eternal. And in that small, gritty morning ritual, the Egyptians were just like us. But this leaves us with a lingering... Let us return to the banks of the Nile. It's mid-morning now. The heat begins to gather above the sand like a thick veil. You hear the distant shouts of farmers tilling soil and the creak of wooden boats nudging the current. Inside a modest home, mud brick, flat roof, shaded by woven palm mats, a man is hunched over a shallow stone bowl. He's not cooking. He's not grinding grain. He's making toothpaste. Well, not toothpaste in the way you know it. There's no creamy tube with blue racing stripes, no mint flavor, no dentist's seal of approval. But what he is crafting is an early precursor to modern dental paste, a mixture known for its sting, its strange smell, and its improbable popularity. He begins with rock salt. Mined from the deserts and brought in on camelback, salt had both preservative and abrasive qualities. A pinch is added to the bowl. Next, he sprinkles in crushed flowers of iris, an aromatic flourish with vague medicinal associations. Then he adds ashes, charred remains of burnt ox hooves, sometimes bones, ground finely into dust. Finally, the star of the recipe, powdered pumice. Sourced from volcanic regions far to the north, this light stone, when pulverized, acts like sandpaper. The mixture is dry, so he moistens it with water or vinegar. In wealthier homes, even honey was added, not for sweetness, but for consistency and antiseptic properties. Stirring slowly, he makes a dark, gritty paste. Thick, heavy, and faintly sulfuric in aroma. If you were a temple scribe, a high priest, or a noblewoman, this is what you might use each morning. It would sting your gums, leave a burning sensation across your tongue, and likely wear down your enamel if overused. Yet Egyptians believed in its power, not only to clean, but to protect. You see, in ancient Egyptian belief, decay was not just physical, it was spiritual. The body had to be kept whole and clean, both in life and in death, for the soul to thrive. The god Thoth, deity of wisdom, was often invoked in medical spells and healing rituals. Among the texts that survive from the Ebers Papyrus, a massive medical document dating to around 1550 BCE, we find mentions of oral care involving everything from mouth rinses to gum ointments. Some prescriptions read more like cooking recipes than medical advice. To firm the teeth, powder of green lead, incense, onion skins, honey, mix, apply to teeth. Green lead, onion skins, honey. It might sound like a bad salad, but this was the forefront of dental science in its day. Egyptians didn't separate science from magic. Words had power. Rituals mattered. Even the act of brushing one's teeth. Archaeological evidence suggests that dental care in ancient Egypt was both advanced and primitive. On one hand, we find gold wires used to bind loose teeth, hints at early surgical techniques, and even prosthetics in a few elite burials. On the other, we find widespread tooth decay, worn enamel, abscesses, and broken jaws. It's possible that much of this work was ceremonial, done post-mortem or as part of burial rites, rather than functional. Gold teeth may have meant little to the living, but everything to the dead. Interestingly, the idea of pain management in Egyptian dentistry was virtually non-existent. There is no mention of anesthetic beyond the numbing properties of certain herbs. If a rotten tooth was extracted, it was likely done with force and little ceremony. And yet, records do show an interest in soothing agents. Paste made of dates and acacia resin for swollen gums, or rinses of beer and copper for ulcers. The most common dental issue wasn't cavities, as you might assume. Rather, it was erosion. The Egyptian diet, filled with coarse grains and sand-blasted bread, wore teeth down to their roots. Even the healthiest individual might, by middle age, have little left in the way of molars. Imagine chewing tough dates with nothing but worn-down nubs for teeth. Imagine biting into bread that contains traces of sand from poorly sieved flour. Over time, the act of eating became painful, and the act of brushing even more so. Yet the practice continued, because to stop was to surrender to rot, to decay, to silence. Let's pause a moment to consider one of the most curious finds, a 4th century CE papyrus, well after the height of ancient Egyptian civilization during Greco-Roman times, that contains what many call the oldest surviving toothpaste recipe. Written in Greek, it reads: 1 drachma of rock salt, 2 drachmas of mint, 1 drachma of dried iris flour, and 20 grains of pepper, crush and mix to a fine powder. The combination is startling. Mint and iris for fragrance, salt for abrasiveness, and pepper for stimulation. It likely burned, but it likely worked. The pepper would have acted as an astringent, improving circulation in the gums and producing a sharp, tingling sensation. Not unlike the fresh burn touted by some modern brands. This recipe predates modern toothpaste by more than a millennium. It's possible that it was in time, the use of abrasives, sweeteners, and herbal remedies merged with the techniques of new empires, leading to the eventual creation of tooth powders in medieval Persia and later in Europe. Still, much of what the Egyptians pioneered was lost, misunderstood, or seen as mystical. It took thousands of years before the idea of brushing teeth twice a day became a widely accepted norm. And yet, that, while ancient Egyptians lacked fluoride or sonic toothbrushes, they understood something fundamental: the power of ritual and the importance of daily maintenance against the world of decay. So we are left to wonder, how did this gritty, sand-filled routine evolve over centuries into the smooth peppermint ritual we know today? And what happened to these strange ingredients, ashes, pepper, salt, as they crossed